Morning everyone, I'm Matt from the All About Stamps website and Stamp Collector magazine. Welcome to the very first presentation of the 3-day Collectors Conference on GB stamps. Really glad you're here, really hope you enjoy what we've got in store over the next 3 days. This first talk was provided by Richard Morrell, a curator at the British Library Philatelic Collections, and it focuses on John Harrison, the stamp engraver, famous, perhaps most famous for the 1913 Seahorses of King George V. Some amazing designs and very famous within British stamps. So I hope you enjoy this presentation, and I'll speak to you at the end.
Hello there, my name's Richard Scott Morrell and I'm one of the curators of the British Library's Philatelic Collections. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this online presentation, GB related material from the Harrison Collection at the British Library. We are the national collection of the United Kingdom, housing over 8.5 million items of global significance. Established by the bequest of the Taplin Collection to the British Museum Library in 1891, our holdings have continually grown and expanded via various donations, bequests and official transfers of government philatelic archives. Now housed in the British Library St Pancras site, the collection encompasses a wealth of philatelic and security printed material of interest to academics, philatelists, postal historians and various other research specialists. Our 1,000 frame public display gallery on the upper ground floor of the building showcases over 100,000 collection items at any one time, making it the largest permanent exhibition at the British Library. Nevertheless, this is literally a mere fraction of everything we hold. Being the National Philatelic Collection, any member of the public can access it for research on a first-come, first-served basis by booking an appointment in our reading room, which is open from Monday to Friday between 10 AM and 4 PM. In addition to the philatelic material, researchers will have curators on hand to assist them with any questions, as well as a comprehensive range of specialist philatelic catalogues, books, serials and periodicals. GB specialists tend to assume that the lion's share of the Post Office's philatelic material and records is held at the British Postal Museum and Archive or the National Archives in Kew. However, the British Library's philatelic collections also house numerous important collections and archives for individuals interested in the postal history and stamps of Great Britain. This example, taken from our Board of Inland Revenue Stamping Department archive, demonstrates this point wonderfully. It is an imperfect pane of 40 GB 1913-34 Seahorse high value issue 10 shilling stamps. In fact, it's actually a registration sheet for plate B3/8 of this issue, which was officially registered at the Board of Inland Revenue on the 4th of January 1926. Some of my favourite Great Britain items within the British Library's philatelic collections belong to the Harrison Collection. This comprises the private working archive amassed between 1900 and 1934 during the career of the famous British security printing engraver John Augustus Charles Harrison. He was born in Manchester on the 5th of August 1872 within a family of notable engravers. John was apprenticed to his father Samuel when he was 13 years old and 4 years later joined the security printing firm Waterlow Brothers and Leighton, where he worked as an ornamental engraver. Around 1900, Harrison became a freelance engraver, renowned for his striking heraldic bookplates. Following the accession of King George V to the throne, Harrison was employed to engrave dies for many of the most iconic postage stamps in Britain, its empire and the wider world during the first half of the 20th century. In addition to engraving, Harrison was also a gifted painter and enthusiastic actor, and following his death in 1954, the collection was donated to us by his son. So the following table beside me here breaks down the philatelic part of the Harrison collection into its component areas. One can quickly observe that the material is actually global in coverage, including Great Britain, Antigua, Australia, Brazil, British Guyana, the British Solomon Islands, Chile, Rarotonga, now known as the Cook Islands, Costa Rica, Egypt, Guatemala, 2 Indian princely states, Jamaica, Malta, Mozambique, New Zealand, North Borneo, Northern Rhodesia, the Nyasaland Company, Peru, Portugal, Salvador, Sarawak, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Southern Rhodesia, Spain, Guyana known as Thailand, Uruguay and some miscellaneous material. The numbers in brackets within the table illustrate the total number of pages within the archive for each region. And again, you can observe that by far the largest part of this collection relates to GB stamp issues engraved between 1911 and 1937, totaling 66 pages. So the earliest Great Britain material within the Harrison collection relates to the 1911-1912 Downey head definitive issue. The main component of the stamp design was based upon an official 3/4 length photographic portrait of King George V taken by W&D Downey in June 1910. The Harrison collection includes these 2 bromides depicting this photographic portrait, and taken together they chart the development of the Downey portrait into the King's head. So in the first image you could see how the 3/4 length portrait is being cropped, and then by the second image you can see how the entire body has been removed to help prepare for the art and the engraving work to follow. These photographic bromides are followed by a series of impressions taken from the engraved master head die, which underwent 4 different phases of development known as stages 1A to 1D amongst specialist GB collectors. The progression of Harrison's work in these different stages can be chronicled by analysing the gradual removal of the 2 rings of colour surrounding the head engraving, in addition to amendments on the nose, moustache and beard. This in turn is followed by another series of proof impressions taken once again from the master head die, illustrating stages 2A and 2B in Harrison's engraving process. During this phase of the head's development, the die was cleared to account for the rest of the stamp design, and the portrait itself remains largely the same as it was in stage 1D of the previous slide, except for a very slight highlight to the bridge of the King's nose. Within the Harrison collection, one can also find a series of progressive proof impressions of the Downey head which have been taken from the transfer roller, like these 2 illustrated here. Later phases of the development of the Downey head issue stamps can also be found in the Harrison collection, like this plate proof with the reverse 2 at the top for the accepted design of the halfpenny stamp, which has not yet had its denomination added. The collection also includes this stage 1 plate proof impression for the accepted design of the 1penny stamp without its denomination being yet added as well. George V was no fan of the Downey head issue. By November 1911, he suggested that a full profile portrait be adopted for the definitive stamp issue and supplied the post office with a die proof engraved by Thomas De La Rue and Company for the colonial and South African stamps. This was based upon McKennell's iconic bust at the Royal Mint used for coins and medals, which was inspired by an official photographic profile portrait of King George V taken by W&D Downey in June. This bromide here, depicting the official photographic portrait from the Harrison collection, is associated with the engraver's preparatory material for the Great Britain 1912 to 1922 profile head definitive issue. In addition to the bromide illustrating the Downey photograph, the Harrison collection also includes a range of other bromides depicting the McKennell profile portrait bust as used on the South Africa medal, his coin model, and the alternative design for the 1penny stamp. Producing an engraved head portrait from such visual material is far from straightforward and requires careful planning and preparation to get it right. The collection includes this bromide of the McKennell portrait, which Harrison has drawn lines over to visualise how to set about engraving the King's head. This is then followed by a pen and ink sketch of the King's head, which served as a template for Harrison's engraving work. The Harrison collection also includes various progressive die-proof impressions illustrating stages 1 to 3 in the development of the King's profile head for the stamps. It is great fun using this kind of material to chronicle and chart the development of the King's profile head for the definitive issue. For the purposes of this presentation, because we're using low-resolution images, one of the most observable distinctive features in this process, which can be seen, is the continual removal of engraved lines from King George V's forehead, as shown here. In addition to the material just illustrated related to the profile head, the Harrison collection also includes several bromides and a schematic drawing relating to the remaining elements of the designs for the definitive stamp issue, some of which are depicted here. This is then followed by a set of progressive proof impressions in the Harrison collection, which illustrate engraving stages 1A to 4B for the master die of the 1 penny and 2.5 pence values making up the stamp issue. One of the most iconic and popular British stamps engraved by JAC Harrison has to be the 1913-34 Seahorse High Value issue. The Harrison collection includes a single piece relating to this stamp issue. This stage 3 proof impression taken from the master die for the stamp dated the 9/6/12, and you can see the denomination is not yet been added. Collectors of British commemorative stamps issued during the reign of George V will also find much of interest in the Harrison collection. It includes a corpus of preparatory material and progressive proof impressions relating to the 1924 to 1925 British Empire Exhibition commemorative issue. Notable items within the set include this bromide illustrating an essay for the 1 pence value in the set, as well as this colour trial proof in red. This material is then followed up with a plate proof and some progressive proof impressions for the 1.5 pence value making up the stamp issue, which are all illustrated here. A decision was taken to reissue the British Empire Exhibition stamps in 1925. Consequently, the years on all of the dies for the stamps had to be changed from 1924 to 1925, and the Harrison collection includes a range of progressive proof impressions of the die which chart this engraving work. So here on this slide we have a proof impression for the die with the year 1924, as well as one where the 24 has been partially erased. The collection also includes a series of 3 progressive proofs charting the transition from 1924 to 1925 on the 1.5 pence value of the set, which is shown here. The final section of British material within the Harrison collection relates to the development of the 10th of May Postal Union Congress commemorative issue. The collection includes these 3 impressions taken from the Royal Mint's medal head of King George V, which was to be adopted upon the stamp issue. This is followed by a series of progressive proof impressions made by Harrison, which are all based on Ernest Linzell's design for the 1 and 1.5 pence values making up the issue. And these 2 here don't yet have their denomination allocated to them. Finally, the material ends with several progressive proof impressions made by Harrison of the Linzell design, all with their denominations attached as illustrated here. So I've reached the end of my presentation, and one hopes by now that I've amply demonstrated the importance of the British Library's philatelic collections to Great Britain specialists and collectors, and in particular the research value of the Harrison collection. Although the literature on stamp issues from the reign of George V are exhaustive, I've included some of the major works that I consulted here in my list of references. And if you're interested in learning more about Harrison and his collection, I've put some additional references in for people to follow up on. If you have any queries relating to this presentation, or would like to even book an appointment to come and use the collections yourself, you can contact me or the department on the following email list. Likewise, if you're interested in the British Library's philatelic collections and our wider work, why don't you follow us across our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this online presentation. I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.
Thanks, Richard, for that presentation. Fascinating stuff, and so many rarities held at the British Library, which often, people walk past. There's a cafe in the library, if you know it, just on that second mezzanine. There's always students and lots of people around looking at their laptops, sharing coffees, and all along the left-hand wall are frames that show the collections from the British Library Philatelic Collections. So once the library is back up and running, do take a look there. So thanks to Richard, and stay tuned for more talks this afternoon, including a live webinar at 5 o'clock. So if you want to come along to the live webinar, bring questions, then do register. Just click on the conference program and you'll see a register now link. Do register there, and that will send you a link to the Zoom webinar so you can join live. So we'll see you later.